The stars shone cold and distant above the alien colony, among the shining towers and silver roads. One figure always walked alone. Her name was Leora, and she carried a shame no one spoke aloud but everyone believed. Her skin bore strange glowing marks, thin lines that pulsed faintly like starlight. The elders said it was a curse, a dangerous sign, a flaw in her very blood. Because of that, people turned their faces away when she passed. Children were pulled back by their mothers. Whispers filled the air. No one dared touch her. No one dared be her friend. Leora lived in silence, her heart heavy with loneliness. She wanted to scream, to tell them she was not dangerous, but every time she tried, the crowd's eyes grew cold. The shame pressed down on her like endless night. Her people believed she carried misfortune, and no matter how kind she tried to be, they rejected her. At the edge of the colony stood her small shelter. It was no more than a metal box built from scraps. Cold winds slipped through the cracks. Her meals were leftovers given with pity. Every day she looked up at the sky, wondering if the stars held another place where she could belong. One night, the rejection became too heavy. The elders had spoken cruelly, saying she should leave before her curse spread. The crowd had agreed with their silence. Tears burned her eyes as she walked back to her shelter. Her glowing marks flickered brighter, betraying her pain. She sat on the floor, hugging her knees, feeling smaller than ever. In that moment, she made a decision. If her world had no place for her, she would search the stars for one. The next morning, before dawn, she packed what little she owned, a thin blanket, a small piece of fruit, a broken compass she had once found. She covered her glowing marks with rags. Her steps carried her to the edge of the colony. Beyond that border stretched the wasteland, a desert of dust and broken ruins, from an ancient war. No one went there, but Leora walked into it, her heart pounding. With each step she left behind the voices of shame. With each step she walked closer to the unknown. The wasteland was endless. Dust storms rose and fell. Old metal wrecks lay half-buried in the ground. Her legs ached, her throat burned, but she kept walking. The silence of the desert was better than the silence of rejection. Here no one whispered, no one stared. Here she was just a girl under the stars. Days passed, her food ran out. Her water was almost gone. Still, she walked, but her strength was fading. One evening, she reached the ruins of an old station. The building was broken, walls torn apart by time and war. She crawled inside, her body weak. Dust covered the floor. Silence filled the air. Leora lay down, her eyes closing, her breath shallow. In her last thoughts, she wondered if anyone would remember her, if anyone would care. Her glowing marks flickered faintly, the light of a dying star. But just before she slipped into darkness, footsteps echoed in the ruins. A shadow fell over her. A figure bent down. Strange, different from her people. The face was human. His eyes widened at the sight of her glowing marks. He reached out, brushing the dust from her cheek. "Are you alive?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. Leora's eyes opened slightly, confusion mixing with fear. Why would a human care for her when her own kind did not? Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Leave me. I am cursed." But the human shook his head. "I don't see a curse," he said. "I see someone who needs help." Darkness pulled her under. The last thing she felt was the warmth of strong hands lifting her gently. For the first time in her life, someone held her without fear. For the first time, she was not avoided but saved. When Leora opened her eyes again, the world felt strange. The cold stone floor of the ruins was gone. Instead, she lay on a soft blanket inside a dimly lit chamber. The air smelled of metal, oil, and faint smoke. Machines hummed gently around her, blinking with colored lights. Her weak body trembled, but she could feel warmth covering her shoulders. Someone had placed a jacket over her. For the first time, in many nights she did not shiver. Then she heard footsteps. Her heart leapt with fear. Slowly she turned her head and saw him, the human. Tall, broad-shouldered, his skin weathered by travel. He wore simple gear, patched and dirty. His eyes were sharp, yet not unkind. He carried a tray with a small container of water and something that looked like bread. When he saw her awake, relief softened his face. "You survived," he said, his voice calm. She stared at him, unsure what to say. No one had spoken to her without disgust for as long as she could remember. Her lips parted, but the only words that came were a whisper. Why did you save me?" The human placed the tray beside her and crouched down. "Because you needed help," he answered simply. "As long as I can help, I will." His words made no sense to her. Her own people, her own blood, had abandoned her. Yet this outsider, a human, a stranger of another world, had chosen to protect her. She pulled the jacket tighter around herself. Her glowing marks peeked out from under her sleeves. The faint light reflected in his eyes. "You don't fear this?" she asked, her voice breaking. "My people say it is a curse." The human studied the glowing lines for a long moment. Then he shook his head. "I don't see a curse," he said firmly. "I see light. Beautiful light." Her throat tightened. Her chest ached. No one had ever spoken those words to her. For a moment she wanted to believe him, but doubt clung to her heart like chains. "You don't understand," she whispered. "My people say I bring misfortune. If you stay near me, danger will follow." The human smiled faintly, a small, tired smile. "I've been living in danger a long time," he replied. "Danger doesn't scare me. But leaving someone to die? That would." He offered her the container of water. Her hands shook as she reached for it. The cool liquid touched her lips and she drank greedily. Tears stung her eyes as life returned to her body. Then she took a bite of the bread, rough but filling. Warmth spread through her chest, not only from the food but from something deeper. For the first time she felt cared for. The human sat near the small fire in the corner. "I'm Kale," he said, his voice echoing gently. She hesitated, then whispered, "Leora." He nodded as though the name was something precious. "Well, Leora, you're safe now," but safety was never meant to last. That night, while Kale repaired a small machine on the table, Leora's glowing marks brightened suddenly. The light pulsed faster like a signal, her chest filled with panic. No, they found me," she whispered. Kale looked up, frowning. "Who?" "My people," she said, her voice trembling. "They don't want me back. They want me gone. They will come to erase me." Kale's jaw tightened. He rose and pulled a weapon from his pack, a long rifle with strange attachments. The calm in his movements was frightening, yet comforting. He did not look like someone who would run. "They'll have to go through me first," he said. Leora stared at him in shock. Her own kind had cast her away. Yet this human who owed her nothing stood ready to fight for her. Her heart raced, torn between fear and hope. Why would you do this?" she asked again, desperate to understand. Kyle turned to her, his eyes steady. "Because everyone deserves a chance to live. Even if the whole world says otherwise." His words struck her deeper than any blade. For the first time in her life, she felt like she was not alone. But outside the ruined station, shadows moved. Figures cloaked in darkness approached through the wasteland. Their footsteps were silent, but their intent was clear. They had come to finish what they started. Inside, Kyle checked his rifle. The firelight reflected in his determined eyes. Leora sat frozen, fear gripping her heart. Would this human truly fight for her? Would she even survive another night? The ruins trembled faintly as the first pursuers reached the walls. Kyle raised his weapon, ready. Leora's glowing marks pulsed faster, casting eerie light across the chamber. In that moment she realized something. Her fate was no longer hers. Alone, her life was tied to this human, and whatever happened next would decide both their futures. The night outside the ruined station was heavy with silence, but it was not the silence of peace. It was the silence before a storm. Kale crouched near the shattered doorway, his rifle steady. Every nerve in his body was alert, listening for the footsteps he knew were there. Leora sat in the corner, clutching the blanket tight. Her glowing marks flickered in fear, their light betraying her. She pressed her arms against her body, trying to dim the glow. Her heart pounded as memories of rejection returned. Her people had shamed her, cursed her, cast her away, and now they had come to finish the work they started. But this time, she was not alone. Kyle turned his head slightly, speaking in a calm voice on "Stay down, stay quiet, and trust me." Trust, such a simple word, yet it was the one thing her people had never allowed her. Now a stranger asked for it as though it were the most natural thing in the world. The ruins shook as the first pursuers stepped inside, dark figures with narrow visors and silent blades. They moved like shadows, swift and merciless. Leora gasped, but Kale fired before they could reach her. The sharp crack of his weapon echoed through the empty halls. One figure fell, another ducked. The shadows retreated into cover. The fight had begun. Kyle moved with precision, his eyes sharp, his aim steady. Leora watched in awe. She had never seen anyone fight for her before. Every breath, every movement of his body spoke one truth. He would not let them take her. But the attackers were many, and Kyle was only one man. His rifle roared again, the muzzle flashing in the dark. The smell of smoke filled the air. Still they pressed forward step by step. The ruin walls trembled with their assault. Fear consumed Leora. Her glowing marks pulsed wildly. The light grew, brighter until the entire chamber shone with her glow. Kale turned to her quickly. "Leora, look at me, not them," he said firmly. Her eyes locked on his. "There's nothing cursed about you. What you have is strength." Strength? She had never believed it, but Kale's voice carried a weight that made her heart still. She pressed her trembling hands against the ground. Her light pulsed again, this time stronger. The shadows flinched, covering their eyes from the sudden glare. Kale seized the moment, firing again, forcing the attackers back. Minutes stretched like hours, then, as suddenly as it began, the ruins grew silent once more. The shadows had retreated, leaving only smoke and echoes. Kale lowered his rifle, his shoulders tense. He scanned the broken doorway for a long moment before finally relaxing. "They'll be back," he muttered, "but not tonight." He turned to Leora and his face softened. She was shaking, her glowing marks still bright. "I told you," Kale said gently, crouching in front of her. "You're not cursed. You're powerful." Tears welled in her eyes. "No one has ever said that to me," she whispered. "All my life they told me I was dangerous, a mistake, a shame to my people." Kale's hand rested lightly on her shoulder. "Then they were wrong," he said, his voice steady. "Shame isn't in you. It's in the way they treated you." Her throat tightened, and for a long moment she could not speak. But in that silence, something shifted inside her. For the first time, she believed, just a little, that she might not be a curse. That she might be more. Kyle built the fire higher, the warm light filling the chamber. He gave her another piece of bread, and she ate slowly. Every bite tasted different now. Not just food, but hope. He sat across from her, his rifle resting at his side. "Tell me about your people," he asked. Her gaze dropped, her voice soft. "They believe the marks bring misfortune, storms, sickness, death." She touched her glowing arm gently. "When I was born, my mother held me close, but the elders came. They told her I would doom us all. They forced her to let me go." Her voice cracked. "I never saw her again." Kale's hands clenched into fists. He knew cruelty when he heard it, but he also knew that sometimes people believed lies so strongly they could not see truth. He leaned forward, his voice firm. "Leora, listen to me. What they called a curse saved us tonight. Your light blinded them, gave me the chance to fight. That's not a curse, it's a gift." Her eyes widened, her chest tightening with a strange warmth. A gift. No one had ever dared call it that. For the first time she wanted to believe it might be true. The fire crackled and silence fell between them. But it was not the silence of fear. It was something gentler, something warmer. Leora looked at Kyle, at the human who had lifted her from the dust, and slowly, carefully, she whispered, "Thank you." Kale smiled faintly. "You don't need to thank me," he said. "But if you want to live, you'll need to keep trusting me. We're not safe here. Your people will return, and in greater numbers." She nodded, fear rising again. "Where will we go?" she asked. Kale stood, slinging his rifle across his back. "To my ship," he said. "It's not much, but it can take us far from here." Her heart beat fast, leaving this world, leaving the only place she had ever known. But when she looked at him, at the human who saw light where others saw shame, she felt the answer before she spoke it. "I'll go," she whispered. Kale nodded once, his eyes sharp with determination. Then he turned toward the doorway. The night outside was endless, but for the first time, Leora was not afraid to face it, because she would not face it alone. The wasteland stretched endlessly under the pale light of 2 moons. Kale and Leora moved quickly, their footsteps crunching over broken stone. Behind them, the ruins grew smaller, swallowed by the night. Ahead, hidden in the jagged cliffs, waited Kale's ship. It was their only hope of escaping before the hunters returned. Leora's heart pounded with every step. Her body was tired, but fear pushed her forward. The glowing lines on her arms pulsed softly with each heartbeat. She kept them wrapped in cloth, afraid the light might give them away. But no matter how she covered them, the glow always returned. It was the one thing she could never escape. Kale walked ahead, his rifle strapped across his back. Every so often he glanced over his shoulder, scanning the shadows. He moved with the focus of a soldier. Yet when his eyes met hers, there was a softness there, a silent promise that he would not let her fall behind. At last, they reached a narrow canyon where the cliffs rose high on either side. There, hidden under a layer of camouflaging cloth and sand, lay Kale's ship, a small vessel, scarred and dented from years of use, but to Leora, it looked like freedom. Her breath caught as Kale pulled aside the cover and opened the hatch. "Get inside," he said quietly. She climbed up the steps, her hands trembling as she touched the metal. Inside was cramped but warm, filled with the smell of fuel and old leather. Lights flickered weakly as Kale powered up the systems. The hum of the engine filled the air like a heartbeat. For the first time, Leora dared to hope they might escape, but Kale's sharp voice cut through her thoughts. "They're close," he said, checking the sensors. "They'll track us here soon." Her chest tightened. "Why won't they stop?" she asked. "They cast me out. Why keep chasing me?" Kale turned, his eyes narrowing. "That's what I want to know." She hesitated, her hands gripping the edge of the chair. Memories rose like dark waters, memories she had buried deep. "I was born during the storm season," she whispered. "The skies split with fire, the ground shook, our crops died. The elders said my birth had angered the stars." Kyle frowned. "That doesn't explain why they want you dead now." Her glowing marks flickered brighter. "When I was a child, strange things happened around me. Machines sparked when I touched them. Lights flickered, storms grew stronger. The people said it was proof I carried a curse, that I brought ruin wherever I walked." Her voice broke as she covered her arms. "They believed if they let me live, disaster would follow." Kale leaned back, studying her carefully. "You're saying you affect energy, storms, machines?" She nodded weakly. "I don't understand it. But, yes." Instead of fear, Kale's eyes filled with curiosity. "That's not a curse, Leora. That's power. No wonder they fear you, but fear isn't truth." She looked at him, tears shining in her eyes. "My own mother gave me away. She was too afraid to keep me." The words cut deeper than any blade. Her voice shook as she whispered, "If even she could not love me, then maybe I really am cursed." Kale's hand rested on hers, steady and strong. "Listen to me, Leora. Your people didn't reject you because you are cursed. They rejected you because they were too weak to face what they didn't understand. That doesn't make you cursed, it makes them blind." Her breath caught. His words filled her with a warmth she didn't know how to hold. But before she could speak, the ship's sensors beeped sharply. Kyle's eyes hardened. They've found us. Through the viewport, dark shapes appeared at the mouth of the canyon. Dozens of figures, their armor gleaming under the moonlight. They moved like hunters closing in on prey. And they were armed. Kale's hands flew over the controls. The ship roared to life, dust rising in clouds. "Hold on," he said. The vessel lifted, engines screaming. Blades of energy slashed through the night as the pursuers opened fire. Bolts of light struck the cliffs, sending rock crashing down. Leora gripped the seat, her heart racing. Her glowing marks flared wildly, reacting to the chaos. The ship surged, upward, weaving through the canyon. Kale's hands moved with practiced skill, but the enemy ships followed, sleek and deadly. Their weapons lit the night sky. Explosions shook the vessel, alarms blaring. Leora's fear rose like fire inside her. She pressed her hands against the metal walls, desperate for safety, and then it happened. Her glowing marks blazed brighter than ever. The lights of the cockpit flickered. The ship's system surged with sudden power. Engines roared louder, faster, pushing them beyond their limits. Kale's eyes widened. "What did you—" But the question was lost in the storm of speed. The ship leapt forward, leaving the pursuers struggling behind. Energy crackled around them, wild and uncontrolled. The air shimmered with strange light as they burst free of the canyon. The enemy. Ships tried to follow, but their systems sparked and died. One by one, they fell back, powerless. When silence finally returned, the stars spread wide around them. Kyle exhaled slowly, his hands gripping the controls. He turned to Leora, who sat, trembling, her arms glowing like suns. "That wasn't a curse," he said softly. "That was you saving us," but Leora shook her head, fear still burning in her eyes. "No. You don't understand. If I can do this, if I can draw power like this, then maybe the elders were right. Maybe I am dangerous." Kyle leaned closer, his voice steady as steel. "Dangerous? Maybe. But not cursed, Leora, never cursed, and I promise you this. As long as I'm alive, no one will take you again." Her heart trembled. For the first time, she dared to believe him. But deep inside, she knew one truth. The shadows of her past were not gone. They had only just begun to follow her. The ship shook as it tore through the upper atmosphere. Engines burned hot, warning lights flashing across the control panels. Kale gripped the controls tightly, sweat on his brow. Behind them, enemy ships regrouped, their dark wings cutting through the clouds like blades. They were not giving up. Leora sat strapped into the co-pilot's chair, her glowing marks pulsing with fear. Every tremor of the ship made her stomach twist. The memory of her power flooding through the vessel haunted her. She still felt the energy buzzing under her skin, wild and uncontrolled. She turned to Kale, her voice shaking. "They won't stop, will they?" Kale's jaw tightened. His eyes locked on the stars ahead. "No," he said. "They won't. Not until they think you're gone for good." His voice carried no panic, only iron. But Leora could see the exhaustion in his eyes. He had fought and run too many battles alone. The ship swerved sharply as a blast from behind struck near their wing. Alarms screamed. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Leora gasped, gripping the armrests. Kale cursed under his breath and pushed the vessel harder. The small ship wasn't built for long battles. It was old, scarred, held together by patches and luck. And luck was running thin. The enemy ships closed in, sleek and deadly. They moved. Like predators circling, waiting for the kill, Kale checked the controls. Fuel levels dropping fast, shields thin. He knew they couldn't win in a straight fight, but he also knew giving up was not an option. He glanced at Leora, her wide eyes, reflecting the red glow of warning lights. "You trust me?" he asked suddenly. She blinked, startled. "Yes," she whispered, though fear shook her voice. "Then hold on," Kale growled. The ship dove sharply, engines screaming, stars blurred as they spun through space, twisting into the shadow of an asteroid belt. Massive rocks drifted in silence, colliding slowly. It was a graveyard of stone and wreckage, perfect for hiding or dying. The enemy followed, beams of light tearing through the void. Explosions rippled across the asteroids. As Kale swerved between them, every movement was a razor's edge between survival and destruction. Leora's breath caught with each near miss. She had never flown, never seen the stars this close, and now she was watching death streak past her in beams of fire. A sudden blast rocked the ship. Metal screamed, sparks burst across the cockpit. A warning flashed red across the panel. Hull breach, rear section, Leora cried out, her glowing marks flaring bright. Kyle slammed a control, sealing off the damaged section, but he knew they couldn't take many more hits. "We won't make it," Leora whispered, her voice breaking. Kale turned sharply, his eyes blazing. "Yes, we will," he snapped. "As long as I'm breathing, we will." The conviction in his voice struck her like a blade of fire. He was risking his life again and again for her. Someone his people would call a stranger. Someone her own people had cast away. Why? Why would he fight so hard? The question burned inside her. But before she could ask, the enemy struck again. Another blast hit the wing, sending the ship spinning. The stars turned into blurs of light and shadow. Leora screamed, thrown against her straps. Kale gritted his teeth, fighting the controls. Metal groaned as the vessel steadied, barely holding together. Her glowing marks flared again. Energy rippled through the cockpit, making the lights flicker. Kale glanced at her. Realization flashing in his eyes. "Leora, whatever you did before, do it again." Her heart pounded. I don't know how. It just happened." "Then let it happen," he urged. "Don't fight it. Trust yourself." Trust herself? She had spent her life believing she was a curse. Every flicker of light on her skin was met with fear and shame. But now this human asked her to trust it, to believe it was more than a curse, to believe it was hers. She closed her eyes. The hum of the engines filled her ears. Her heartbeat echoed with the rhythm of the ship. She felt the energy inside her, hot and wild, and instead of pushing it away, she let it rise. Her marks blazed with light, flooding the cockpit with a glow like a second sun. The ship shuddered, then surged with power. Engines roared louder, faster. Systems sparked to life, stronger than before. Kale grinned fiercely as the vessel leapt forward. The enemy ships struggled to keep pace. Their sensors scrambled by the strange energy. Leora gasped, her body trembling. But she felt something new, a control she had never known. The ship moved with her heartbeat, her breath, her will. She wasn't just a passenger. She was part of the fight. Kale steered them deeper into the asteroid belt. "Good, Leora, keep it steady," he shouted over the alarms. The ship spun between drifting rocks, faster and sharper than before. Enemy ships crashed into stone, colliding with each other as they tried to follow. Explosions lit the darkness, breaking the hunters apart. Finally, silence returned. The enemy ships lay broken among the asteroids. Kyle slowed the vessel, breathing hard. He looked at Leora, her marks still glowing faintly, her face pale with exhaustion. "You saved us," he said simply. Her lips trembled, her eyes shining with tears. "No," she whispered. "We saved each other." For a long moment they sat in silence. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of survival. The stars stretched wide around them, endless and cold. But inside that small ship, there was warmth. A bond forged not by blood, but by choice. Yet even as relief settled, Kale's eyes darkened. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "They'll send more. Stronger ones, and we still don't know why they fear you so much." Leora's glow dimmed, her heart heavy. She had escaped death again, but the shadows of her past still hunted her. And somewhere out there, the truth of her power waited to be revealed. A truth that might save her, or destroy her and Kale both. The ship drifted silently beyond the asteroid field. Its engines hummed weakly, patched together by Kale's quick hands. Inside the cockpit, the lights flickered dimly. But for now, there was peace. For the first time since their escape, no shadows followed. Leora sat with her arms wrapped around herself. Her glowing marks pulsed faintly, softer now but still alive. She stared at them with mixed fear and wonder. She had used her gift, her curse, as her people had named it. and it had saved them. Yet instead of relief, unease stirred. In her chest, what if they were right all along? What if her power was too dangerous to control? Cale finished tightening a panel and glanced at her. "You're quiet," he said. She lifted her eyes to meet his. "Because I'm afraid," she admitted. "Every time I use this, it feels bigger, stronger, like it could burn everything around me." Cale leaned back, wiping grease from his hands. "Or it could protect," he countered. "Danger and strength are two sides of the same blade. The choice of how to use it, that's what matters." His words settled heavy in her mind. She wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at her heart. The ship's sensors beeped suddenly. Kyle stiffened, moving quickly to the console. A transmission flashed across the screen, encrypted alien symbols crawling like fire. Leora's breath caught. She recognized the language instantly. It was her people's. The voice that followed was sharp, commanding, and cold. "Leora, daughter of shame. You cannot run, you cannot hide, return, or the stars themselves will fall by your hand." Her blood turned to ice. The voice was the High Elder, leader of her colony. His words echoed like thunder in her mind. Her hands trembled, her marks flaring brighter in fear. "They know where I am," she whispered. "They know what I did. They will come again, and worse." Cale's eyes hardened. "Good," he said. "Let them come. If they want you, they'll have to go through me." But Leora shook her head. "You don't understand, Cale. The elders never speak such words without reason. If they warned of the stars falling, it means my power is not just feared. It is known." Kyle frowned. "Known? What do you mean?" Her voice cracked as she explained. "When I was young, they tested me in secret. The elders saw that my marks connected with machines, storms, even the ground itself. They said my very blood could draw energy from the world, not just to create, but to destroy if my power grew beyond control. It could tear apart a city or worse, ignite the skies." The words hung in the air like a blade over both their heads. Cale stared at her, at the trembling girl who sat across from him. She looked small, fragile, afraid, and yet inside her rested the power to shatter worlds. He spoke slowly, his voice steady. "So they cast you out, not to protect the people, but to protect themselves from fear." His jaw clenched. "Cowards," Leora shook her head. "No, Cale. Maybe they were right. If I lose control, if this gift breaks free, I could destroy everything, including you." He stepped closer, kneeling so his eyes met hers. "Listen to me, Leora. You didn't destroy me. You saved me. Twice. That's not a curse. That's not doom. That's you choosing to protect." Her eyes filled with tears. "But what if one day I can't choose? What if it takes over?" His hand rested gently on hers. "Then I'll be there to remind you who you are." Before she could answer, the ship jolted violently. Alarms screamed as Cale rushed back to the console. On the screen, massive shapes appeared, warships, dozens of them, each carrying the mark of the elders. Their weapons glowed with deadly light. Leora's breath caught. "They've sent the fleet." Cale's face hardened. "They want you that badly?" Her silence was the only answer he needed. The warships spread out, surrounding them like wolves around prey. A new transmission crackled through. The High Elder's voice filled the cockpit again. "Leora, child of ruin, you carry the spark that will burn the stars. Surrender now, or watch this human die for your sin." Cale's fists clenched. He reached for his rifle even as alarms wailed, but Leora's heart broke at the words. They were not only after her, they would kill Cale, and it would be her fault. Her glowing marks flared uncontrollably. The lights of the cockpit flickered. Power surged through the ship as though her fear bled into the wires. Kyle turned to her quickly. "Leora, don't listen to them. You are not their weapon. You are not their curse." Tears streamed down her face. "But Cale, they're right about one thing. If I lose control now, I could destroy us both." Cale's voice rose above the alarms, firm and unyielding. Then don't lose control, choose, Leora. Choose what you want to be, not what they tell you you are. His words struck her deeper than any blade. For the first time she realized, her power was not the Elder's. To define it was hers, and in her hands it could be more than destruction. She wiped her tears, her glowing arms steadying, her breath slowed, her heartbeat finding rhythm. She looked at Kale, at the human who refused to abandon her, and she whispered, I choose. Outside, the fleet closed in, weapons aimed, ready to fire. But inside the small ship, a new strength awakened in Leora's heart. Not fear, not shame, but resolve. The shadows of her past had followed her across the stars. Now she would face them, not as a curse, not as a child of ruin, but as Leora, the girl who chose to fight for life. The stars trembled with fire as the Elder fleet closed in. Dozens of warships surrounded Kale's small vessel, their weapons burning with light. The void was silent, yet heavy with the promise of death. Inside the cockpit, alarms screamed, red lights flashing across every panel. Kale's hands gripped the controls, his eyes sharp. He had faced battles before, but never odds like this. Still, there was no fear in him, only focus. If this was the end, he would meet it standing, beside him. Leora sat still, her glowing marks shining brighter than ever. But for once they were not flickering with fear. They pulsed with rhythm, steady as her breath. She had chosen not to be a curse, not to be a weapon of shame. She had chosen to fight for life, for herself, for Kale. A transmission cut through the alarms. The High Elder's voice filled the cockpit, sharp as a blade. Leora, surrender. Your light is not yours. It belongs to us, refuse, and you will bring ruin to this human and yourself. Leora's heart trembled. For a moment she saw herself again as that outcast child, feared, avoided, shamed. But then she looked at Kale, the man who had lifted her from the dust, who had called her gift strength, not curse. And she knew the truth. The Elder's voice held no power anymore. She rose from her chair, her arms glowing like living stars. No, she whispered. Her voice grew louder, echoing in the cockpit. No, I am not your weapon. I am not your shame. I am Leora, and I choose my own path. The ship trembled as her light grew brighter. Kyle shielded his eyes but did not look away. He felt the hum of energy fill the vessel, power flowing not wild and chaotic but controlled. For the first time, she was not running from her gift. She was embracing it. Outside, the warships fired, beams of burning light cut through space toward them. But before they struck, Leora raised her hands, her glowing marks flared, and a shield of pure energy bloomed around the vessel. The blasts struck, but the shield held, the void lit with blinding brilliance as her power deflected the storm. Kale's eyes widened. You're doing it, he breathed. She shook her head. No. We're doing it. You believed in me when no one else did. Now I believe too. The Elder fleet fired again, pouring endless power into the void. But Leora stepped forward, her voice clear. You will not take me. You will not decide who I am. Her light spread outward, a wave of energy rippling from the small ship. The enemy weapons flickered, their engines stuttering. One by one, their systems shut down, sparks flying across their hulls. The mighty fleet trembled in silence, powerless against the light they had once feared. Inside, Kale stared in awe. Her gift was not destruction, it was balance. She could draw energy, bend it, and release it not as ruin, but as harmony. The Elders had been wrong all along. She was not born to burn the stars. She was born to guide them. The transmission crackled again, the High Elder's voice trembling for the first time. What have you done? Leora lifted her chin. I've taken back what you stole. My life. My gift is mine, not yours, and I will never again bow to your fear. Silence followed, broken only by the hum of the small ship. The Elder fleet, once so mighty, floated, powerless in the dark. For the first time in her life, Leora was not the hunted. She was free. Her glow dimmed slowly, fading back to a gentle shimmer. Exhaustion washed over her. But Kyle was there, steady hands catching her as she swayed. He guided her back to the chair, his voice warm. "You did it," he whispered. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "No, we did." Kyle smiled too, though his eyes softened with concern. "You'll need rest? Power like that. It takes its toll." She nodded, leaning against him. For the first time, she felt not just safe but sheltered, not because of her people, but because of one human who had seen her light as something worth saving. Hours later, as the stars stretched wide before them, Kale set the ship's course away from the Elder fleet. There would be other battles, other hunts. But for now, they were free, and freedom was enough. Leora opened her eyes, gazing at the stars beyond the viewport. They no longer looked cold and distant. They looked alive, like endless paths waiting to be walked. Her voice was soft but steady. "Kyle, do you think your people will accept me, even if I'm not human?" He looked at her, his eyes calm. "Humanity doesn't care about your blood. We care about what you choose to be. And you've already proven what you are. Braver than most of us." Her heart warmed at his words. For so long she had longed for shelter, for care. And now, she had found it not among her own kind, but in the hands of one human who chose kindness over fear. The ship drifted quietly through the stars, two souls side by side, an outcast who had found her light, and a human who had shown her that even among endless shadows, one act of care could change everything. Leora closed her eyes, her head resting lightly against Kale's shoulder. For the first time, her heart whispered not of fear, but of hope. She was no longer shamed, no longer avoided. She was seen. She was sheltered. She was free. And as the stars stretched on without end, she knew her story had only just begun.